It's really important for us to understand patterns in our life. Triggers, responses, what happens, why do we react the way that we do in any communication that we have? I mean, I don't know about you, but there's times where somebody comes in and they give me the wrong look and I'm immediately reacting, right? They didn't even have to say anything to me. And I'm all of a sudden, what? Am I wearing the wrong shirt? What's going on? Did I not do if I got something, my makeup smeared? What's going on? And really, maybe they just had indigestion. I got the funny look of their bodily discomfort and I misread it, right? We have patterns in us that cause us to react certain ways. And it's interesting because when we step back and look at what's happening, 9 times out of 10, do we even have any idea why someone gave us the look that they did?
No, we will never know why or even had anything pertaining to us.
Right. And really, I'm sure it didn't. If we don't know them very well, I mean, who knows? Maybe they had a bad dream and they were remembering it and had this weird thought. I mean, you think about all the what ifs that it could be, but we get so busy drawing closure at what we think it is, but we draw closure based off of our experiences and the patterns that we set, right? If we walk into a fight with our parents, like the child, right, that we talked about earlier. The kid walks in, the parents are fighting, the parent turns, what are you doing? I didn't say you could come in. Basically takes the same emotion that was going between the two of them, turns and directs it at the child who really did nothing wrong. Maybe they were coming in to say, I got an A at school and the parent should have been excited, but, it backfired on him. And the child comes up with this belief that, oh, maybe if I hadn't walked in, they wouldn't be fighting. And if they ended up divorced, then he believes, oh my gosh, maybe I caused the divorce. I mean, because the young mind doesn't necessarily have the awareness to really understand what happened, right?
They're usually black and white thinkers. As a child, it's either black or it's white. There's no gray areas that we're trying to teach.
To sort through.
Yes.
Yeah, because the brain has not developed. Right?
Yes.
So if you look at the triggers in our life, and this is really, really important because the triggers and the responses that we build as part of that are what are our instantaneous reactions. That we can go from happy and excited and immediately irritated in one split second.
Someone can walk in the room, just somebody that you may have a hard time with can walk in the room and you will instantly be triggered. Immediately.
Right. What if it's an old boyfriend?
Right.
And all the irritations of the breakup comes back hot and heavy, and you're angry and you're mad, and maybe you were just in the middle of a great conversation with a girlfriend, and that shift on just a one split second. When that happens, recognize that there's a whole series of patterns that repeated itself over and over and over again several times until it was automatic. So let's look at that for a second, right? When it starts, you have a stimulus. You have something that somebody says, some experience that comes in, and that input then triggers a thought. The child standing in the room with the parents fighting, right? Stimulus is, I step in the room, the parents are fighting, they turn and snap at me. The thought is, oh no, what did I do wrong, right? In the, oh no, what did I do wrong comes emotion. Oh no. Guilt, hurt. Have I just screwed up? What did I do? With that hurt and that maybe shame and guilt comes a whole emotional chemical bath from the brain. And that bath of emotion floods through us to a point that it'll even trigger a body language with us. We become sullen and our body starts to fall and is heavy as we feel that chemical release in our body. And then another thought, oh no. What did I do? Are they fighting because of me? Have I screwed this up? And that's the hypothesis. That's the question that we start posing to ourselves. And if left sorting there long enough without enough information and the emotions still coming hot and heavy, we're going to end up with a belief. I caused my parents to fight. And with that, then the response, sadness, tears, guilt. And we can carry that one situation with us for years and years and years. And if every time you happen to walk in, parents who fight, it's not a one and done thing. It's going to happen, right? So if you start to round the corner and you catch the look of the parent. You don't even have to fully step in, and you look and you see that don't come in here look. And then that whole same series of thought comes, the emotion comes, the body language starts to play. The thought, oh no, what did I do wrong? The hypothesis, did I cause this fight too? And then the belief, oh no, I've done something wrong and my parents are always fighting and I keep screwing up and it's my fault. And this whole reaction sequence begins. The more that happens, the faster that emotion and that chemical bath runs through us and the beliefs form and they solidify deep. Now, is it true? Is it the child's fault that the parents are fighting?
Not at all.
No. But what does the child have that arrests that pattern in the moment so that it doesn't form?
Right. He's got nothing to base anything off of.
Right. And the younger the child, the more black and white the thinking, which means the less they're able to interpret. And they assume the worst because they see the hurt, they see the pain, and all they have is the view through their own eyes.
Right.
And we're no different.
And you may find with that child as an adult, as they grow up, the second they hear fighting or come around the corner and they hear contention, they will immediately go from the stimulus to the response. Oh my gosh, what is happening? And instantly have a trigger and not even realize that they're triggered and they have all this emotion on them and they don't even know what it is. Whatever that emotion that they always have will hit them and they won't even realize it, but it'll hit them in 2 seconds and they're already there just by somebody arguing because that was the stimulus for him.
And the chemical bath that goes with it, because the brain doesn't know the difference. I mean, if you think about it, if you're talking about a scary movie, right? Or you're having a sleepover and they're talking about scary things, right? In the woods, this is happening. And, your body starts to react to the story. Is it real? Is the wolf on your heels? No. But is the energy there? Is the worry? Is the fear? You think about dreams. Is it really happening? No. But in the dream, the body is still releasing all the chemicals of the dream into your system.
And it's a cortisol dump.
Right. And the more that emotion dumps, the stronger the imprinting, the stronger the event. Well, luckily for us, right? The mind records both the real and
the perceived
event. So those are critical keys to understand as you start to back out of your triggers and responses to be able to put a healthy pattern in place.
I think the one thing too that is important when we recognize that we have triggers, and it's easier to do as an adult, obviously, is being able to stop the trigger when it occurs. Because if you recognize you are having a trigger, I mentioned you will have an actual chemical dump of cortisol. Cortisol is a bad chemical in your body that dumps. And when cortisol is dumping, your reasoning, your prefrontal lobes go offline and your reasoning is out the window. You are having too big of a chemical dump, so you can't see truth if it was standing in front of your face because you are then triggered and cortisol is taking over and that is all that's going to rule you. But you got to stop and recognize when you have a reaction, we all have them. What is happening to my body? Okay, I need to stop and rewind. I'm not going to let this trigger dictate how I'm going to start reacting. I want to dictate and decide how I choose to act and how I want to respond and not let that control me.
Right. And when you first start to do that, you're looking back at it because it's so automatic, like you talked about. Once you've gone through it and you go, okay, I'm on the other side of the trigger response and the chemical dump, and I'm looking at it going, what just happened? That's when it's the opportunity to say, okay, what was going on that sent me? What did I see? What did I hear? What did I walk into? And, write it down if you need to. Make a note. Okay, when this happened, when these scenarios were in play, I had this reaction. Okay, let's watch. Does it happen at other times? And you put that thought into the brain. We've now given it something to have an alert about that something's new.
It's unusual, different.
Right? It's saying, okay, I need to watch for this, like buying a new car. I'm going to watch for all of the new model, right? This is the new model in our life that we want to look for so that we can start building the awareness we need to reverse the pattern and or set a new one. One of the things that I think is important to understand is trauma, because these trigger responses, when linked to trauma, have a lot of heavy emotion. And if the trauma is intense enough, the trigger response can be so instantaneous that we don't even see the individual steps. And did we even have a thought? Did we even consciously think about it? And to explain that, I have to step back to the day that the sheriff showed up on my front porch. I was at home for lunch. Rob was flying. Somebody had flown in from Canada to pick up a plane that they had purchased. They needed some time in the air before flying out, and Rob was asked to come help. We'd eaten lunch. I asked, why are you doing this? And he said, well, because I would hope that, because it's not like he was making money at it, but he said, because I would hope that if I was stranded somewhere, someone would be there to help me home, right? So he goes out this door with this pay it forward sort of loving attitude, which is very much Rob.
Very Rob. That's how he lived his life 100%.
Right. He'd have been there for anybody. Roll forward 5 hours, and I'm driving home from taking my son to the scouting, and the sheriff's out front. I meet him at the front door, and my whole world falls apart. And over the next several days, hundreds of people are in my home. And every time somebody walks in, how are you doing? How are you? How are you? How are you? Are you okay? How are the kids? How are you? I mean, you think about that, which I've never thought about before, right? I've never had somebody die before. And of course, that's a valuing question. And of course, they love you and they're caring about you. Well, fast forward 7.5 years. And somebody says to me, how are you? Do you know what happens to me? And I didn't even realize this. When somebody would ask me how I'm doing, I would almost freeze. And I wouldn't know how to answer that. I'd be like, I'm okay, right? It's been 7+ years. And my body is still reacting to the hundreds of questions of how are you over the first several days. And I find myself split. Half of me is standing right there the day Rob died, and half of me is standing here and today, and I don't know how to answer that question. So to answer it, I would say, to try and find something, I'd say, well, could always be better, could always be worse, so why complain, right? That's how I unconsciously began answering both worlds. I was answering the part of me that was stuck back at that event where that question, how are you, kept coming. And today, when they're asking me a question that has nothing to do with 7+ years ago. But my body did not know how to react any differently. And how do I today say, I'm doing great, the kids are awesome, without also feeling completely guilty that I'm doing great, standing in the face of just finding out my husband is dead and he's not coming home ever again? You think about the trauma, the PTSD that goes into that. PTSD is alive and well. If somebody would tell me they're going to text me by a certain time in the day and they hadn't texted me, the chemical bath that I would go through thinking, oh no, what if they got in a car crash? What if they're dead? And the bath was so intense, I would end up planning a funeral in my mind and seeing myself get through the funeral just to get through the chemical bath and the emotion that came because they didn't send me a text when they said they would.
Wow.
If they had never told me they were going to send me a text when they got home so I know they were safe or, whatever the reason was, I would have been fine. Don't tell me. But the trigger of, I will text you, which is what Rob said to me, I'll text you when I land. And the text never came. So triggers are that elusive to us. So in order for me to get past my trigger of the simple question of how are you, I had to map out my whole life. I had to draw on a piece of paper and say, okay, well, when I was in college and somebody would ask me, how are you doing? Well, they weren't asking me how I was doing when I was a child at home with my family. That's silly. When I was, in Israel and they'd ask me how I'm doing, it's not like they were asking me how I was doing when I was in Texas. I mean, and it was so funny to me how simple of questions I had to take myself through to back out of the trigger response that was built as a result of that one heavy-laden trauma event. We all have trauma. It could be the child walking in to the fighting parents, and the trigger and the response is real. If you can step back and look at it and take yourself through an exercise, not just mentally, but emotionally, and look at the two worlds at the same time. And then, like you said earlier, right? The hypothesis that you pose to the mind that says, hey, what if? Maybe, is it possible that? And you throw out those other things, then you can start resetting and planning the way your mind needs it to be. You're writing the code. You're writing the operating agreement that says how you'll react. And that's a powerful tool. That's exciting. In fact, when I got all done doing this, and I had mapped out my big, beautiful picture on paper, which I'm very visual, so I like to, kind of make it fun. And not that it's fun when you're dealing with it, but, it's how I see it. I actually got a phone call from a friend, and they said, hey, how are you? Which, of course, is a social thing, right?
Right. We all say, how are you?
Right. And really, half the time, do we really mean it?
Well, wait, we're drawing closure right there. Some people really might mean it, but yes, you are right.
Right. But some don't. It's as casual as
hi.
hi.
It is as casual as hi. You are absolutely right.
So this friend calls, hey, how are you? And my reaction, oh my gosh, I'm doing so well. My kids are doing great. We've got an engagement that just happened. We've got weddings. Life is good. We have roof over our head, food on the table. Life is amazing. It's so good. And then the friend says, I've never heard you like this. I said, I know, it's so awesome. Ask me again. Because for the first time in over 7 years, I didn't feel guilty for saying I'm okay. Because I didn't find myself standing back in the face of the sheriff on my doorstep. That's how powerful triggers and responses are. That's how powerful trauma and PTSD is. That's how powerful those chemical baths are when the brain starts to dump the emotion. If the brain starts dumping fear and it bathes you, if it starts dumping anger and it bathes you and the emotion that surges, it is so intense and so controlling that you will just start snowballing into reactions that you can't stop unless you put the things in place to make it happen. And that's the exciting thing about what we talk about.
Kristen, that was an amazing story. And I'm sure that was a tough one probably to share because I'm sure it brought back some emotion. But then it was so fun to watch you put it all together and piece together how you're okay and how you could be okay. And recognizing that that was just an emotion and a dump and a trauma that caused a physical reaction to your body. And now you're taking charge of that.
Right. And that was a journey, and it is exciting.
It is
but
awesome.
This isn't the only type of thing, right?
Absolutely. I think that if we all recognize there is trauma and hard things all the time, we will have trauma with illnesses. We will have trauma with the loss of a job. That's real. That's real to everybody. That causes trauma. That is difficult. Through a divorce, not being able to have children, that causes trauma. That causes reactions. That causes patterns in you that you may not even be aware of, which then sends an emotion to someone else that you're not even intending to send. These are alive and well in everybody. But if we recognize what it is that's alive and well, and it doesn't have to break us, it's just a tool to help us realize where we are.
Yeah, and these experiences make us strong. We learn depths of compassion and love and the ability to give someone the hall pass and the benefit of the doubt to say, you know what, there's a lot of emotion coming at me. It may have nothing to do with me.
Absolutely. I think if we were to all understand and know everybody's story, we would look at them so differently. But the great thing and the tool that we're learning right now, because most of the time we will never know and understand somebody's story, but the fact that we could go and not draw closure and know that, yes, I just got met with some type of emotion that didn't make sense, but it doesn't matter because that person is important, that person is of value, and it doesn't have to affect me. All I need to do is show 100% love and create a climate that they are safe and they are comfortable in.
Right. And that's the beauty of it.